Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man walah wa ba'd. So we continue that which we started last month, and this will be a monthly lesson intended to be for the families. And we are reading from and benefiting from this short but very beneficial risala of a Shaykh Muhammad Ghalib entitled Hayatuna al-Usriya Bayn al-Waqi' wal-Ma'mul, or our family life between the reality and that which is hoped for. We started off in the last session mentioning some waqafat, some points of benefit that are extracted from the life of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, things which if we implemented them, then they would lead to hayatun that is tayyiba, a goodly life as it relates to that which is between us and our families. We mentioned 3 points, and we're now going to go into the 4th point. I'm going to mention maybe about 4 points in this session, and likewise some practical advices which the Shaykh gives to the husbands, the wives, and likewise their friends. So al-waqfa al-rabi'a, we pick up from the 4th point, and it is mu'alijatuhu lil-mashakil, how he alayhi salam would solve and resolve problems. Whenever issues arose, what was his method in remedying those issues and solving those problems? Likewise, what was not from his method of solving and resolving these issues? جاء عن أنس رضي الله عنه بلغ صفية زوج رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أن حفصة قالت عنها بنت يهودي فبكت صفية. That Sophia, who was the wife of the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam, that on one occasion Hafsa said to her, or said about her, Bintu Yahudi. She referred to her as the daughter of a Jew. Daughter of a Jew. And we know these things, they took place between co-wives. At times even the best of the women, there were issues between co-wives. Women sharing a man, much less the best man that ever walked the face of the earth. There will be some jealousy. There will be some issues between the co-wives. The best of the women, they had them. And so, on one occasion, Hafsa said to Sophia, may Allah be pleased with both of them, Bint Yahudi, daughter of a Jew. Fabakat Sophia. So Sophia, she wept, she cried, meaning being offended from that which Hafsa had said to her. وَدَخَلَ عَلَيْهَا النَّبِيُّ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ وَهِيَ تَبْكِي. And the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam entered upon her while she was crying. فَقَالَ, and he said, مَا يُبْكِيكِ, what makes you cry? Why are you crying? فَقَالَتْ قَالَتْ لِي حَفْصَةَ إِنِّي إِبْنَةَ يَهُودِي. She said that that Hafsa said to me that I am the daughter of a Jew. So what did the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam do? How did he resolve this issue between two of his wives? فَقَالَ النَّبِي صلى الله عليه وسلم وَإِنَّكِ ابْنَةُ نَبِي. He said, rather you are the daughter of a prophet. You are the daughter of a prophet. Meaning that amongst your forefathers is a prophet from the prophets of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. And that is Musa alayhi salam. وَإِنَّ عَمَّكِ لَنَبِي. And your uncle was likewise a prophet, meaning his brother Harun. وَإِنَّكِ لَتَحْتَ نَبِي. And even now, you are under the care of a prophet. فَفِيمَا تَبْخَرُ عَلَيْكَ. So with what then can she boast or brag against you? You have all of these virtues. So he eased the mind of his wife, Sophia. He eased her mind. And he consoled her, mentioning some good qualities that she had and some things that she should consider that would put her heart at ease. فَسَعَ إِلَىٰ أَن يُطَيِّبْ خَاطِرَهَا لِمَا رَآهَا تَبْكِي, or لَمَّا رَآهَا تَبْكِي. And so he alayhi salatu wasalam hastened to bring ease to her mind when he saw her crying. وَأَمَّا حَفْصَ قَالَ لَهَا, and as for Hafsa, he said to her, اتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَا Hafsa. He said, fear Allah, Hafsa. Fear Allah. So we find him alayhi salatu wasalam easing the mind of his wife when he saw that she had been offended and that she was troubled. And likewise, the wife who had erred, he admonished her with what was necessary. Didn't exceed that. He didn't go beyond the bounds, because he was not one who would go beyond bounds, but rather he said a statement that showed that what she had done was an error. He told her to fear Allah. Have taqwa of Allah, ya Hafsa. فَقَدَّمَ أَمْرَ الشَّرْعِ. So therefore we find him alayhi salam giving precedence to the affair of the legislation, meaning that he didn't just let what she did go unaddressed. When she did something that needed to be addressed, he addressed it. You need to fear Allah. And this is our example, our role model. وَأَنْكَرَ فِعْلَهَا لِعَدَمْ جَوَازِ مَا قَامَتْ بِهِ. And so therefore he alayhi salam repudiated this action of hers, this action that she had done due to the impermissibility of it, meaning insulting, name calling, and the likes of this. It's impermissible. It is impermissible. So he didn't simply accept that from her. وَهَذَا فِيهِ أَنَ الشَّرْعُ يُقَدَّمْ عَلَى الْعَاطِفَةِ. And in this we find the affair that the legislation takes precedence over emotion. The legislation takes precedence over emotion. وَأَنَ الْإِنْكَارِ عِلَاجٌ. And that likewise objection to something that is objectionable is a method of treatment. If you see something that needs to be addressed, you address it. You address it. But you address it with what is necessary. You don't exceed and go beyond what is necessary. كان من حجه صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه لا يضرب النساء. And likewise, from his guidance is that he alayhi salatu wasalam would not beat women. He would not strike the women. It is not from right guidance. As Aisha radiallahu anha said, ما ضرب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم امرأة له قط. That the Messenger of Allah never struck a wife of his, ever. بل قال, rather he alayhi salatu said, لا تضربوا إماء الله. He said, do not hit the female servants of Allah. Don't strike them. Don't beat them. And this is from the excellence of his nature, how he was. And you find that, as the ulama mentioned, the more noble and more honorable a man is, the further he will be away from striking a woman. The more noble and honorable a man is, the further he will be away from beating or striking a woman. So he alayhi salam never, as his wife mentioned, ما ضرب رسول الله, that the Messenger of Allah never struck one of his women. And he had beautiful methods of association with them and dealings with his wives. This is the fourth point in how he dealt with mashakil and issues that arose from his wives. He dealt with those issues with wisdom. As our brother just mentioned, putting things in their proper place. Putting inkar, an objection, where objection needed to be at. Putting gentleness and kindness where gentleness and kindness should be at. And like this. Al-Waqfa al-Khamisa, the fifth issue, Husnu istima'ihi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wa tahawurihi, is how he would have an excellent manner of listening and conversing with his wives. It has come in the Sunan of Abi Dawood on the authority of Aisha radiallahu anha أنها قالت قدم رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من غزوة تبوك أو خيبر, that the Messenger of Allah alayhi wasallam returned from the battle of Tabuk, or it was the battle of Khaybar. It is as if she wasn't sure which battle it was. وَفِي صَحْرَتِهَا صَدْرٌ, and in her, she had like a storage room, if you will. And that storage room, it had a curtain on its entrance. فَحَبَّتْ رِيحٌ فَكَشَفَتْ نَاحِيَةَ السِّتْرِ عَنْ بَنَاتٍ لِعَائِشَةَ لُعَبٍ. And so the wind blew, and the corner of the curtain raised and revealed a portion of the room that Aisha had dolls in. She had dolls in it. فَقَالَ مَا هَذَا يَا عَائِشَةَ. So he said, what is this, O Aisha? What is this? قَالَتْ بَنَاتِي. She said, these are my dolls. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he saw amongst those dolls that she had a faras lahu janahan, that it had a doll that was in the likeness of a horse, that had wings upon it. In some of the narration of this hadith, it mentions that the horse, it had strings from each side, and the strings resembled wings. And so he said, so what is this that I see? What is this one that I see in the middle? She said, it is a horse. He said, وَمَا هَذَا الَّذِي عَلَيْهِ. And what is this that is upon the horse? قَالَتْ جَنَاحَانِ. She said, it's two wings. So he said, alayhi as-salam, farasun lahu janahan. You mean you got a horse with wings? So Aisha radiallahu anha, she said, أَمَا سَمِعْتَ أَنَّ لِسُلَيْمَانَ alayhi salam khaylan laha ajniha. She said, have you not heard that the Prophet Sulaiman had horses that had wings upon them? So she said, فَضَّحِكَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ. So the Messenger of Allah alayhi wasallam, he laughed until his molar teeth could be seen from the severity of his laughter. وَهَذَا, the Shaykh, he mentions, this is from حُسْنُ اسْتِمَاعِهِ لَهَا, the excellence of his listening to her, and how he was engaged in every aspect of the conversation, actually exchanging with her, going back and forth, and he focused upon her and what she had to say and the details of that hiwar. This is how he was, not someone who was half listening while at the same time doing something else. Rather, there comes a time when you should give your wife your attention and your focus, and focus upon her and the conversation that she had. Even if she's talking about spider webs, it doesn't matter what she has to say. You listen. Make some time and listen. And that listening, it goes a long way in the building and establishing of love between you and the strengthening of bonds. وَمِنْ ذَلِكَ أَيْضًا مُسَامِرَةَ الزَّوْجَةِ لِزَوْجِهَا. From that as well is the musamira, when a wife, she may narrate a story to her husband. She sits and she narrates an event, a particular issue that took place, and she's narrating it to you, blow for blow for blow for blow. And sometimes she don't want you to keep interrupting and stopping her and, oh no, that wasn't right. No, she shouldn't have said that. Just listen. Sometimes just listen. That's all she wants to do, is to be heard. And so you listen. Aisha, she would narrate stories to the Prophet ﷺ and events, and he would listen without any ta'affuf, without becoming any, fed up with what she's talking about. Ta'affuf, like, this, I'm just tired of hearing about this. Oof. Right? Oh, Jafa, becoming disgruntled. Kama qalat Aisha marratan li Rasulillah, as Aisha mentioned on one occasion to the Messenger of Allah alayhi wasallam, when narrating to her or to him, umuran sarat fil jahiliyyah, certain affairs that took place during the pre-Islamic days of ignorance. And she said, jalasat ihda ashra imra'atan. And the story of the 11 women. We're familiar with this qissa. And she said that on one occasion, 11 women sat down and they took an oath and made a solemn promise that neither of them would conceal any of the information about their husbands. So they began speaking all about their husbands. ومما ذكرت عائشة رضي الله عنها في هذه الحكاية قصة محبة أبي زر لأم زر. And from that which Aisha had mentioned inside of this hikayah, inside of this narration, is how much Abu Zar loved his wife Zar. And it is a hikayah that is ma'luma, and it is a story and a narration that is well known. We all know the narration to the point that we don't have to mention it in detail. And it is that when Abu Zar, he saw on one occasion, even though he was madly in love with his wife, but on one occasion he saw another woman. And that other woman, somewhat put Abu Zar to trial. And therefore, he divorced Zara. But Zara, she is mentioning this affair while at the same time recounting his good treatment of her and how much she loved her, how much she loved him, how good he was to her. But on this one occasion, he ended up leaving Zara and marrying another woman. And at the end of the story, the Prophet ﷺ said to Aisha, كنت لك كأبي زر لأم زر غير أني لا أطلقك أبدا. He said that I am to you just as Abu Zar is to Zar. However, I am never going to divorce you. I'm never going to divorce you. So we see that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, this story, if we are familiar with the hadith, it is a long hadith. And Aisha, from her hifz and her memorization, she narrated the entire story in detail, from memory. And the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, from the husn of his istima' to his wife, the excellence of his listening to his wife, he sat there engaged, listening, and paying attention. Because at the end of the narration, he said to her, at the end of those 11 different stories of 11 different women with their husbands, he said, I am to you like Abu Zar is to Zar. However, I am never going to divorce you. But what did Aisha say? She said, Bal, rather, anta khayru min Abi Zar. Rather, you are better than Abu Zar. Rather, you are better than Abu Zar. This is from the excellence of dealings between a husband and a wife. The husband, he says a good word to his wife, and what does she do? She reciprocates. She reciprocates. Don't just be the recipient of every good compliment. You just receive good compliments, but you don't ever give any out. Right? Your wife, she tells you you're handsome. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I just got this stove. Appreciate it. Oh, you look nice today, mashallah. Yeah, this is new oil I got, you know what I mean? What can I say? Rather, someone says a good word to you, hal jaza'ul ihsani ila al-ihsan. Is there any recompense for good other than good? Someone does good to you, they do good for you, you do good back for them. They say a kind word or a good word, reciprocate. Give a compliment as well. Aisha, from her fiqh and her understanding of affairs, the Messenger of Allah said this kind word to her. What did she do? She said a kind word back to him. Rather, you are better than Abu Zar. And so, for ijaba to Aisha, this answer or response of Aisha is an ijaba that is jamila. It is a beautiful response. كانت بسبب فطنها. It was the result of her sound understanding. It shows sound understanding when a person deals with someone like this. Someone does good to you, you do what? Do good back to them. They say a good word to you, you do what? Say a good word back to them. This is from sound judgment, sound understanding that a person operates like this. Now, and the excellence of how she dealt with her husband. لأن النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام أكرمها بقوله, because the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام ennobled her with his statement. I am to you like Abu Zar is to Zar. However, I'm never going to divorce you. And Aisha radiallahu anha, she responded in kind. الوقفة السادسة, the sixth point, تودده صلى الله عليه وسلم وتلطفه وعنايته بأهله, is how much he loved, how much he displayed kindness and care for his family. So the Prophet ﷺ كان يتلطف مع أزواجه في جميع أموره, that he was kind and displayed kindness to his wives in all of his affairs. حتى في أمر مأكله ومشربه, even in his food and drink, even in how he dealt with them with his own food and his own drink. As Aisha radiallahu anha said, كان رسول الله, that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he used to لا يؤتى بالإناء فأشرب منه وأنا حائض, that he used to have a cup or a vessel brought, and then I would drink from that vessel whilst I was menstruating. ثم يأخذه, and then he would take the cup from me and he would place his mouth on the same exact spot that my mouth had been. And she said as well, وَإِنِّي كُنْتُ لَآخُذُ الْأَرَضُ مِنَ اللَّحْمِ ثُمَّ يَأْخُذُهُ صلى الله عليه وسلم فَيَضَعُ فَاهُ عَلَى مَوْضِعِ فِيهِ. That as well, she says, I would take a morsel of meat and I would bite that morsel of meat, and he would take the same morsel of meat from me and he would bite it at the same place that my mouth had been. All of this is from the displaying of love, sharing food. And how many of us sit and eat from the same vessel, the same plate as our wives? We sit and eat and we're just picking from the same plate together. Try it. Try it. It's something which builds love. And it is from his sunnah and how he dealt with his wives and displayed kindness. كَمَا أَنَّهُ مِنْ شِدَّةِ إِنَايَتِهِ. Likewise, from the intensity of his love and care for his wives and his diligence upon them, كَانَ يَرْقِيهِنْ بِنَفْسِهِ فِي حَالِ الْمَرَضِ. That if ever one of them fell ill, he himself would make ruqya upon them. He himself will be sitting there reading upon his wives, making ruqya upon them. As has come from Aisha radiallahu anha, that she said, كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا مرض أحد من أهل بيته, that if anyone of his household fell ill, نفث عليه, and he would blow upon them and recite the 2 chapters of seeking refuge. He himself would do this. He wouldn't we'll take an aspirin and sit down somewhere. Rather, he himself would establish the ruqya upon them, reading upon them and reciting and rubbing and so on and so forth. فَأَيْ أَثَرْ جَمِيلٌ يَتْرُكُهُ الزَّوْجِ فِي قَلْبِ زَوْجَتِهِ. So what type of amazing effect would this leave in the heart of the wife, that her husband is caring for her in this manner, reciting over her, making ruqya upon her? It will leave a beautiful effect, and it will increase the love inside of the heart of the wife when her husband does this. Likewise, al-waqfa as-sabi'a, now, the 7th waqfa is how he would patiently bear the difficulties that may have come to him by way of his family. He would patiently bear that when it came to him. تأمل فيما رواه النعمان ibn Bashir. He said, reflect upon that which Nu'man ibn Bashir narrated regarding his forbearance, alayhi salatu wasalam, and his patience. He said, استأذن أبو بكر على النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فسمع صوت عائشة عاليا. On one occasion, that Abu Bakr, he sought permission to enter upon the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and he heard the voice of Aisha being raised and elevated. فَلَمَّا دَخَلَ, so when Abu Bakr came in, تَنَاوَلَهَا he snatched her up in order to slap her. He snatched her up in order to slap her. It's the Messenger of Allah. You yell at the Messenger of Allah like this. And so, he said, Ala araki tarfa'ina sawtaki ala Rasulullah. Am I seeing you raise your voice at the Messenger of Allah alayhi salam? So the Prophet alayhi salam, he stepped in between Abu Bakr and his daughter. He stepped in between Abu Bakr and his daughter in order that he would not strike Aisha. فَخَرَجَ Abu Bakr. So Abu Bakr, he left out being angry at that which he had seen. So the Prophet ﷺ, after this, said to her, كَيْفَ رَأَيْتِنِي? What do you think about me now that I just saved you from this man? And so Abu Bakr, he remained for some days, and later he came back to the house of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, وَاسْتَأْذَنَ عَلَيْهِ, and he sought permission again to enter upon him. Now, I want to draw your attention to something here, right? After Aisha, who was the most beloved person to the Messenger of Allah? Her father, Abu Bakr. Okay. And so, we would not be in error if we were to say that Abu Bakr was his best friend, right? But at times, even the best of friends, the best of besties, the BFFs, right? Abu Bakr, he left, he stayed gone for some days. He stayed gone for some days. And then he came back. And the Shaykh is going to bring another point of benefit towards the end of what we're going to read regarding the manners of dealing with friends. The manners of dealing with friends and the effects that friends can have upon the marriage. So the Shaykh, he says that he sought permission to enter upon the Prophet ﷺ, and he found them to be reclining in a state of ease and contentment. And so he said to them, or he asked them about this particular affair and what had taken place. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, قَدْ فَعَلْنَا وَقَدْ فَعَلْنَا, that we did this and we did that. Meaning we worked it out. We worked it out. Everything is fine between us now. As tends to take place with couples. They may go through something and then, a day or two, they're fine. Sometimes not even that long. He said, so reflect upon how the Messenger of Allah, he displayed patience and forbearance. And this is an affair which many of the people are heedless of. The affair of overlooking faults, defects, and the displaying of love between the spouses. Al-Waqfa al-Thamina, the 8th issue, Birruhu sallallahu alayhi wa sallam bizawjatihi wa ahalihin wa sadiqatihin, is how he would be kind to his wives families, and likewise to the friends of his wives. And from the excellence of his Ash-Shura and his displaying the rights of his wives is that he would not forget about his wife Khadija even after she had passed away. And this is from kindness to his wife, even after she had passed away, he would remember her. And he would speak about her, say kind words about her, and the likes of this. So Aisha, on one occasion, said to him, كَأَنَّهُ لَمْ يَكُنْ لِإِمْرَأَةٌ فِي الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا خَدِيجَةٌ. Aisha, we know the love that he had for Aisha. But Aisha said, it is as if there was no other woman in the dunya except for Khadija. Aisha's other wife is saying this. And this is due to the enormous amount that she would hear him praising Khadija, speaking well about her in good words. So the Prophet ﷺ, he used to say, إِنَّهَا كَانَتْ وَكَانَتْ أَيْ. He used to say that Khadija was this, Khadija was that, she gave me children, she did this, she did that. Now, speaking good words about Khadija. On one occasion, Khadija's sister, Hala bint Khuwaylid. Hala bint Khuwaylid. She was Khadija bint Khuwaylid. Khadija's sister had came, and she sought permission to enter upon the Messenger of Allah alayhi salam, and when she did, she reminded him of Khadija. And Aisha was present. So the Prophet alayhi salam, he said, "Oh Allah, Hala has reminded me of Khadija." And so Aisha, upon hearing this, she says, "Ma tadhkuru min ajuzin." She said that she always remembering and speaking about this ajuz, this elderly lady. Min ajaiz Quraysh, from the elderly ladies of the Quraysh. Whereas Allah has replaced her with that which is better for you. So the Prophet alayhi salam, he said, "Ma abdalani Allah khayran minha." No, Allah has not given me better than her. This is Aisha be speaking about. Some of the ulama, they say concerning Aisha that when the Prophet ﷺ was asked, or he mentioned concerning Aisha that the fadl of Aisha over other women is like the fadl or the virtue of tharid over other foods. Now, and so this tharid is a meal that was prepared by the Arab, and it was considered to be something which was lofty and exquisite. Some of the ulama say that this narration is general, and it's over all women, including Khadija. And this is due to the fiqh and the knowledge of Aisha, to the knowledge that she had attained. Now, and some of them, they say, rather, it's all women with the exception of Khadija. At any rate, Aisha, we know that she had a tremendous status in knowledge and fiqh. She was knowledgeable of medicine, knowledgeable of lineages, as her father, Abu Bakr. He was knowledgeable of lineages to the point that it was said that Abu Bakr could look at a person's feet and tell him what tribe they came from by the way his feet looked. And without doubt, he taught all of this knowledge to his daughter. Now, so we know that she had fadl, she had virtue. But the Messenger of Allah alayhi salam had to humble her a little bit. And on this particular occasion, and he said, rather, Allah has not given me better than Khadija. He said, إِنَّهَا آمَنَتْ بِي إِذْ كَفَرَ بِي النَّاسِ. For she believed in me when the rest of the people disbelieved in me. وَصَدَّقَتْنِي إِذَا كَذَّبَنِ النَّاسِ. And she considered me to be truthful when all of the rest of the people considered me to be a liar. And she likewise aided me and assisted me with her wealth when the rest of the people withheld from me. وَرَزَقَنِ اللَّهُ مِنْهَا الْوَلَدِ. And Allah gave me children by way of her. So he mentioned the virtues which Khadija had over his other wives. وهذا مثال في الوفاء منه لزوجته حتى بعد وفاتها. And this is an instance from him of how he would observe the rights of his wives and he would honor them even after they had passed away. Even after they had passed away. And likewise, on occasions, the friends of Aisha would come and visit her. They would come to her home and visit her. As she mentioned on one occasion, كانت تأتيني سواهبي, that my sawahib, my friends, they would come and visit me. And so she said that the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam, he would answer the door and he would send them back to me. He would answer the door and send them back to me. This is from his showing respect and honoring of the wife's friends. We'll mention 2 more points, and then we'll mention some these advices which she gave, which is some very beautiful advices. Al-Waqfa at-Tasi'a, the 9th point, Tamshihi, is how he would walk with his wives and he would converse with them at night. And this is from his displaying of love and kindness, is that he would walk with his wives at night. They would go for walks. And he would hold conversations with them. كما جاء في حديث علي ibn Hussein, as has come in the hadith of Ali ibn Hussein, that Safiya, the wife of the Prophet alayhi salam, أخبرته أنها جاءت إلى رسول الله. She had informed him that one day she came to the Messenger of Allah alayhi salam تزوره في اعتكافه, that she came to visit him in the Masjid while he was doing i'tikaf in the last 10 nights of the month of Ramadan. And فَتَحَدَّثْتُ عِنْدَهُ سَاعَةً, so I sat there and I spoke with him for about an hour. And then I stood up to leave and returned back to my home. So the Prophet ﷺ stood up to see her off. And when they reached the door of the Masjid, at the door of Salama, مَرَّ الرَّجُلَانِ al-Ansar, or min al-Ansar, the 2 men from the Ansar passed by. And they gave salam to the Messenger of Allah alayhi salam. And he said to them, Allah rislikima, hold up a little bit. Come back. إِنَّمَا هِيَ صَفِيَّةُ بِنْتُ حُيَيْ. This is Safiya bint Huyay. Meaning this is my wife, informing them that this is my wife. Don't, And this is the Messenger of Allah alayhi salam. Some of the people think that they can't be questioned, or they don't need to clarify anything to anybody. If anyone's character was beyond reproach and beyond question, it's him, alayhi salam. Yet we find him clarifying. He said, or when he said that, they said, Subhanallah, Subhanallah ya Rasulullah, wa kabbura alayhima. They said, Subhanallah wa Messenger of Allah, meaning that they were saying this regarding the statement which he had mentioned. فَكَيْفَ يَشُكُّ أَحَدٌ فِي, meaning they were intending by way of that, how can anybody doubt you? You're the Messenger of Allah. We know that anybody is trustworthy and truthful at you. But the Prophet ﷺ, he said, إِنَّ الشَّيْطَانَ يَبْلُغُ مِنَ الْإِنسَانِ مَبْلَغَ الدَّمِ. That shaitan, he runs through the son of Adam, of the human being, like blood going through its veins. وَإِنِّي خَشِيتُ أَنْ يَقْذِفَ فِي قُلُوبِكُمَا شَيْئًا. And I was afraid that shaitan would put something inside of your heart. This is the Messenger of Allah, Muhammad alayhi salam. Now you don't think you need to clarify. You think that you need to answer to anyone or make affairs clear. وجاء عند البخاري كذلك أن النبي إذا كان بالليل سار مع عائشة يتحدث معها. Likewise, he mentions this narration, just alluding to the narration, not mentioning it in detail, but the narration mentions that at night he would go to Aisha and he would speak to her for a time. He would converse with her and talk to her for a time. Al-Waqfa al-Ash-Shura, the last point that we're going to take for this session is تقربه من أهله ببعض الأفعال اللطيفة, is how he alayhi salam, he would do certain actions that would bring him near to his wife and to his family. من جميل معاملته حرصه على التقرب من زوجاته. From the beautiful associations which he had, alayhi salatu salam, is how he would be diligent to do actions that would bring him near to his wives. ومن ذلك أنه كان يتكئ على عائشة كما جاء عنها أنها قالت. From that is that he would sometimes recline and lay down with his head on his wife's lap. He would lay with his head upon his wife's lap. As Aisha said, "Kana Rasulullah yattaki'u fi hijri wa ana ha'id," that he would lay upon my hijr. The hijr, they say, is like this area between the neck and the chest. That he would lay upon her in this area here. And likewise, alayhi salam, he would, some of his wives, they would comb his hair for him. They would groom him. They would comb his hair, and they would oil his hair. As has come in the hadith of Aisha that she said, "La yudkhilu alayya Rasulullah ra'sahu wa huwa fil masjid." That while he was inside of the masjid, he would stick his head inside of my house. Because her house was adjacent to the masjid. As we know, where he is currently buried now is the apartment of Aisha. Where his body is at is exactly where he died at, in the apartment of Aisha. And that is the place where he would, where her apartment was. He would stick his head from the apartment inside of the masjid. And I would comb his hair and oil his hair. وَكَانَ بَيْتْ عَائِشَةَ مُطِلٌّ عَلَى الْمَسْجِدِ. As we mentioned, that the house of Aisha, it was adjacent to the masjid. And the Prophet ﷺ, he would stick his head from the masjid into her apartment, and she would comb his hair. And this mawqif of Aisha now look at this, what Aisha would do. She would spend time grooming her husband. This is what a wife should do for her husband. She should take care of her husband. And she should not feel as though it's a belittlement of her to see after his needs, and to take care of him, to groom him, to perhaps henna his beard, perhaps brush his hair, perhaps moisturize his feet, and so on and so forth. She should not deem it to be a type of belittlement of herself. Rather, he said, look at this mawqif of Aisha, and let the women contemplate upon this. This particular khuluq al-kareem, this good character which she would display. فَظَهَرَتْ آثَارْ تَحَبُّبِهَا لِزَوْجِهَا. And this would be something which would bring about love of the wife for the husband and vice versa. بِخِدْمَتِهَا لَهُ. By way of her serving him, serving her husband. وَتَقَرُّبِهَا مِنْهُ. And her being kind to him and drawing near to him. وَبِعِنَايَتِهَا بِتَفَاصِيلِ حَاجَاتِهِ. And likewise, by way of her taking care of his detailed needs. And this does not remove her nobility at all. For a woman to serve her husband in this manner, taking care of him, grooming him, looking after him, it does not remove her nobility or her station at all. وَلَا يُقَلِّلْ مِنْ شَأْنِهَا. Nor does it demean her. وَلَا يَكُنْ أَبَدًا سَبَبًا في تسلطه عليها كما قد يخطأ البعض الظن. Nor is it indicative of him being like your, some women, they got this my father kind of mentality. It doesn't mean that. If you're taking care of your husband and looking after your husband, it doesn't mean that you are belittled or that you are disgraced in any way. He said, "Women su and nasiha alati," and from the evil advices, from horrible advice which some women give to other women, and these advices are spread via social media, is that the woman, she should not humble herself before her husband. She should not be humble towards her husband, and she should not display kindness and affection towards him. لأن ذلك يأتي له التسلط عليها, because this would place him over top of her. You being humble towards your husband and submissive, it's going to place him over you. So don't do any of that. Rather, you two are equal. You're on the same level. La wallah. وهذه من النصائح التي تُحَرِّضُ الزَّوْجَ عَلَى زَوْجِهَا. And these are from those evil advices. What do? They incite women against their husbands. And he says, and it is from that which, without doubt, will cause the destruction of the family. وَلَا سِيَّمَا النَّصَائِحْ الَّتِي تُخَالِفُ الشَّرْعَ. Especially when those advices contradict the legislation of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. He said this is destruction of that which has been built. It is corruption of that which has been rectified. And it is destroying that which has been established. وَمَتَى مَا عَرَفَتْ زَوْجَ دَوْرَهَا. So when the woman, she doesn't know her role. And likewise, the husband does not know and understand and comprehend his role. And the life of the family is like this, then this will no doubt lead to a horrible affair. And what the Shaykh, he concludes with, or what we're going to conclude with, are these advices which he gives. He said, and from this, it is suitable that we give a couple of pointed and directed rasail, latifa, these kind and messages and advices that are pointed and directed. Firstly, ila zawj, advice to the zawj, to the husband. وَخَاصَةً الَّذِي غَلَبَ غِيَابَهُ عَلَى أَهْلِهِ عَلَى حُضُورِهِ. Especially the one who was gone away from his family more than he is with them. He's away from his family more than he is with them. فَلَا يُعْرَفْ لَهُ لِقَاء وَلَا رُؤْيَةٌ بِسَبْ كَثْرَةِ خُرُوجِهِ. So you barely see this guy. You barely see him. Don't know when he's coming, or if he's coming at all, due to the frequency with which he leaves. And he's always busy, away from his family. فَلَا شَكَّ يَا أَيُّهَا الزَّوْجُ. Without doubt, O husband, he says, أَنَّ تَأَمَّلْ وَتَفَكَّرْ فِي هَذِهِ الْمُعَامَلَاتِ الْيَسِيرَةِ. He said that if we contemplate and reflect upon these actions, these small actions, which contain diligence, we do small things which will bring about mawadda and ulfa, these actions which the Messenger of Allah did, alayhi salam, ma'a azwajihi lana fiha al-uswa al-hasana. They contain within them an excellent example for us. If we were to deal with our families as the Messenger of Allah would deal with his family, displaying kindness, making time for them, break the monotony. Break the monotony sometimes. Do something different. Do something different. Nah, because the same old, day in, day out, year in, year out, month in, month out, drive a person bananas. Drive a person insane. Create issues. If we follow the example of the Messenger of Allah doing these small things, then they contain within them an uswa al-hasana wal-qudwa al-mutla, an example that is hasana, and he is an exemplary role model for us. The second advice, ila zawja, is to the wife. Second advice is to the wife. He said, your role, O female servant of Allah, anna la taj'ali ahadan ghayrak, don't let anyone other than yourself see after the needs and take care of your husband. Don't let someone else other than yourself look after the needs of your husband. فَلَا تُنِيبِي فِي ذَلِكَ الْقَادِمَاتِ. So don't relegate the affairs to your housekeeper. Most of us don't have housekeepers, right? Don't let somebody else be the one who irons his stove, or cooks his food, or looks after his needs, or flatters him when he needs to be flattered, or speaks a good word when he's feeling down. Don't let someone else do that. You be the one to do it. He says, not the children, the sons, the daughters, rather, this is your position. This is your mahal. He says, وَأَنْتِ سَتْرُهُ بَقِطَاءُ. You are the means by way of which he is covered and he is shielded. وَأَقْرَبَ النَّاسِ إِلَيْهِ. You are the closest of the people to him. فَتَوَدَّدْ الْمَرْأَةِ لِزَوْجِهَا وَتَقَرُّبُهَا إِلَيْهِ هُوَ السَّبَبُ أَنَّ كِرَامَ الرِّجَالِ لِاحْتِرَامِهَا وَتَقْدِيرِهَا. He said, the woman displaying love for her husband, drawing near to him, this is a sabab, it is a reason or a means for those men who have nobility. If an individual, if a man is a noble man, he's a good man of right intellect and right mind, when a woman treats him like this, he can't do nothing but respect her. He can't do nothing but respect her. But when she ignores him, lets other people tend to his needs, this will be a trial. وَلَا يُفْهَمْ مِنْ ذَلِكَ أَبَدًا الْإِذْلَالِ أَوَ التَّنَقُّصِ. And when the woman deals with her husband like this, seeing after all of his needs, making sure that she's the one who does all of that, then he said, this is never to be understood that it debases or lowers the woman. Never to be understood like this. وَالْحَيَاءَ الْأُسْرِيَّةِ حِيَاةٌ مِيثَاقٌ من التودد والمحبة وعنوان للتواضع والألفة. He said the family life, it is a life that is a covenant, it is a bond. It is a bond. And it contains affection and love, humility, and niceness between the spouses. The third advice, إلى صديقة الزوجة, to the friend of the wife. That's the third advice. To the friend of the wife's homegirl, her buddy, right? Her friend, her BFF. He says, dear friend, O friend of the wife, Kuni khayru ukhtin li ukhtik. He said, be the best sister to your sister. Be the best sister to your sister. Wahrasi alayha aktar mimma hiya harisatun ala nafsiha. And be more diligent upon her than she is over her own self. He says, وَخُذِي بِيَدِهَا فِي أَن تَبِرَّ زَوْجِهَا. And you grab her hand and you push her towards kind treatment of her husband. Be that kind of friend that advises her. Look, see after your husband. Take care of your husband. Take care of your husband's needs. Right? He says, وَتُؤَدِّي حُقُوقَ مَنْ فِي بَيْتِهَا. And to fulfill the rights of those who are inside of her home. وَاسْتَغْنِ عَنْ قَضَاء سَاعَاتٍ طَوِيلَةٍ فِي مُحَادَثَتِهَا. He said, and don't spend long hours talking to her on the phone, taking up her time with texting and so on and so forth. And there's a time for the friends to meet. There's a time for them to talk. There's a time for them to associate with each other. There's a time for that. But don't take up all of her time. Rather, remain aloof. Be okay. Just fall back a little bit. Fall back a tad bit. So that she can spend time with her husband. Taking care of her children. Taking care of the needs of her household. Because as long as she's on the phone with you, she's not fulfilling somebody's need who has a right over her. So push her towards her obligations. The fulfillment of obligations. What she's going to be asked about in front of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. Encourage her upon this. Be an aid and an assistant to her. وَانْشِغَالْ وَقْتِهَا. And don't waste up and take up all of her time. فَكَمْ مِنْ اِتِّصَالٍ كَانَ سَبَبًا لِلْإِنْتِقَاءِ. Because how many phone calls or connections are a means for a disconnect somewhere else. We connect here, that means I'm disconnecting from somewhere else in order to connect over here. Right? He said, وَكَمْ مِنْ تَوَاصَلٍ كَانَ سَبَبًا لِلْانْفِصَالِ. And how many hours are spent connecting and talking and socializing, which are a means for a lack of socialization on the other end. So therefore, he said, be diligent upon taking care of her, meaning your friend, and aiding her in the fulfillment of her obligations, and be more diligent in doing so than you are upon taking up her time and spending time with her and talking to her. The last advice is the advice to the friend of the husband. Ayyuha sahib, dear friend, O friend of the husband, kun khayra awnin li sadiqik. He said, be the best aid and an assistant towards your friend. Because this friend of yours is somebody's husband. This friend of yours is someone's husband. He said, wa alayhi huquq, and he has rights that are incumbent upon him. Yajib an yu'addiha laha, and it is obligatory upon him to fulfill those rights towards his wife. فَلْتَكُنْ خَفِيفَ الذِّلْ عَلَيْهِ. So therefore, only take up a small amount of his time. Only take up a small amount of his time. Encourage him towards his obligations to fulfill what is incumbent upon him. Be an assistant to your friend. He says, يَشْتَاقُ إِلَيْكَ بِالْبُعْدِ وَلَا يَمُلَّكَ بِالْقُرْبِ. He said, let him long for your presence by being away from him a little bit, as opposed to overburdening him by way of being so close to him, being up on him all the time. Let him long for your presence. Let him miss you. Let your man miss you. Okay? He said, wandur. He said, look and contemplate upon the life of your friend. فِإَنَّ لَهُ أُسْرَةً تَحْتَاجُهُ, that he has a family who is in need of him. And therefore, don't take up all of his time just because you have free time on your hands. He said, وَلَيْسَ فِي هَذَا تَلْمِيحٌ إِلَى قَطْعٍ. He says, and in doing so, this is not like you're just cutting your friend off. It's not like you're just falling back from him and no, he's still your friend. As we saw, Abu Bakr went days. He's the best friend of the Messenger of Allah. Best friend. And we probably, some of those people might probably remember those days before cell phones when you didn't speak to your friends every day. Alright, you didn't speak to your best friend every day. Now, it's a different affair. He said, it is not indicative of some type of cut off anywhere. لكن لا يكونن هذا ديدنك. However, don't make this just the order of the day. We're going to just take up all of each other's time, be around each other 24/7, and so on and so forth. Now, we're going to conclude with this, inshallah ta'ala, and we'll pick up next month with some more points of benefit for the benefit of the family. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.